Hey guys, welcome to those who are new as well as to anyone returning. Today, I wanted to just jump right into it with a quick discussion of a series of visual novels called I Walk Among Zombies. So this visual novel is developed by Seacox and is by far their most popular release, or in this case, series of releases. It was originally created as a Japanese web novel and has been well received since its release. It's starting to get a little bit older as the first volume of the visual novel was released back in 2015. The English translations were completed and published primarily through Dempisoft, with Sekai Project jumping in for the later releases. Unfortunately for us, the English releases lag behind the Japanese ones by about 2 to 3 years per volume. The most recent one, Volume 3, was released alongside Volume 0, a collection of short side stories, only a couple weeks ago in the middle of December, compared to the April 2018 Japanese release. But it doesn't matter now, because they're all out, and unlike me, hopefully you guys didn't have to wait in anticipation year after year as they slowly finally caught up to the Japanese ones. I kinda skimmed over it earlier, but this visual novel is released in 3 volumes telling the main story, with an additional one telling numerous short side stories in Volume 0. Another huge thing to mention is that this is primarily a kinetic novel, which means there are virtually no choices and it's basically exclusively reading. From here, I'm going to try to talk a bit more about the actual content of these VNs instead of just the history and general information of them. One thing that many people are probably going to ask, because it's one of the bigger divides in the visual novel community, is about the H content in the game. The first thing I want to say about this is that there are numerous H scenes in every single one of these games. Most sources you can find this game through, including Steam, Dempisoft, or perhaps some more nefarious places people may obtain games from, will include this content. However, on Steam specifically, the base version does not include these scenes and it requires a DLC download to get them. But the question is, are they necessary? As I mentioned earlier, the divide comes into play. Many who play this game are probably playing it specifically for these scenes, while many others are in search of a great story. Either way, you're in luck. In the first volume there are numerous H scenes, but they slowly become less frequent as the series continues. Also, Volume 0 has almost half of its content dedicated specifically to some H scenes imagined by members of the main cast. One of the strong points of this series is how they implement and play out these scenes. The art, dialogue, and entire atmosphere is a step above the raunchy nature of most H games, yet are still more explicit and lewd than long play VNs that simply contain H scenes. So overall, they play an important role in developing the narrative of the story, yet I come back to the question, are they necessary? Simply, no, not really. You could easily pick up the Steam version and skip them entirely, and the game can easily stand on its own with just this plot. However, in this series, I do believe the audience would gain from viewing them, as long as they're of legal age, of course. It's hard to accurately represent what they add to the story without spoiling too much, but I'll leave it at the extent of power dynamics are exemplified and character relationships are better defined by these scenes. That's not to say everyone's important, but as an overall trend it's fairly accurate, with the exception of Volume 0, but I have some more points to make about that later. The other main thing I wanted to talk about for this series is obviously the plot. Once again leaving it till a little later to discuss, but this time I just wanted to give the people what they wanted first. You know how it is. Anyway, the big picture revolves around our main character Yusuke, a badass biker and apathetic ladies man that's one of the few survivors of the zombie apocalypse. And this next point's kind of a spoiler, but it's given away incredibly early in the story, so I'm going to mention it. And that's, as a main character, he possesses the unique ability to go unnoticed and to even not turn when bitten by zombies. This leads us straight to the aptly named title of the game, I Walk Among Zombies. Perhaps slightly cliche, but utilized unlike many others with his fortunate situation have in the past. Like much of zombie media is portrayed, the world, the atmosphere, and the art is macabre. The characters are jaded, and some are even stupid enough you might believe they truly reflect reality. I'm going to avoid actually describing any other main characters besides Yusuke, as their introductions and roles feel like actual plot points and not just being the necessary supporting cast. Perhaps a strange decision, but if you plan on reading it, hopefully you'll see what I was going for. One way you could describe the story is the experiences Yusuke gains by interacting and occasionally helping other people face a world surrounded by fear and death that he's disconnected from. An exhilarating adventure following a main character who is hard to love or sometimes even like, but reveals a nature that's most likely more common than any of us would hope in the aftermath of civilization. With tons of gritty action, sexual overtones, and the darker side of reality laid bare, the story keeps you engaged the whole way through. A visual novel I could potentially describe as an H game, yet with a great story, or an actual story-based novel that contains an excessive amount of sexual content. Either way, this game blends them together without destroying itself and creates one of the most complete combinations of the two. Now don't get me wrong, the story certainly isn't a masterpiece and most likely won't change your life, but it'll probably make you stop and think at least a few times and provide you a story that's hard to forget. Overall, a pretty great visual novel that most people could find something about to like. In fact, the sprites of some of the zombies are my favorite part of the series, as their beautifully threatening aura is overwhelmingly vivid every time they're present. One of its biggest downfalls, however, is the overall length. I would say roughly 4 hours per main volume for a total of about 12 hours of reading. This alongside the fact that the most difficult part of any story, the ending, being a little lackluster compared to many other crucial moments. Not bad per se, but it gave me the feeling of being a little rushed and lacking a certain conclusiveness. This leads me to the last thing I wanted to talk about, being Volume 0. If you really loved the game, or want to experience all the literature of the world, it's definitely worth checking out, but to me, it felt like easily the most disappointing release. This owes to the fact it's the least overall content, as well as that in my opinion the side stories portrayed the characters unlike how they were throughout the entire story, and the H scenes didn't hold the relevance nor quality they had in the main game. Due to all of this, I would say I personally wouldn't recommend it on its own merit. Without Volume 0 though, Volume 1 to 3 still provide a decent amount of content that appeal to numerous different demographics. And if you're a fan of zombies, the series definitely does it better than most. And I know visual novels are usually less popular than manga or anime, but if you're looking to get into them, this adult VN is a good place to start. So hopefully if you check it out you enjoy it, and if not, let me know why in the comments. And lastly, I just wanted to say if you've never tried reading a VN before, give them a try. There's so many amazing ones out there, and it's an overlooked media form. Anyway, see you guys next time.